Let's get right to part 2 of the TRS-80 Model 12 card cage video. If you haven't watched part 1, give it a skim, because it covers a lot of why and how for this project. Now we've moved into, I guess this is final prototyping, or I'll be lucky enough to actually have it final, but probably final prototyping. So let's take a look at the most recent parts that we're printing when we left our last video. So this is the left side of the card cage. I'll move that back a bit so you can actually see it. And here we have the new fan cutout. And you can see the fan holes go all the way through, but the slot cover holes do not. So they're just deep enough for the slots, which have these little snaps on them. And so that will allow those to snap in without having to stick out the back. So the back is smooth except for the fan holes. I've added reinforcements here. I had a version of this where the cutouts were too small to fit the nuts, and you need a place to fit your nuts. So I enlarged those, and I think they're going to be big enough now. For the backplane side of this, of course, we have the holes in place for the backplane all lined up, and we've got a few reinforcing spots here. If these aren't sufficient, I will I could possibly run these all the way down, but I didn't want to complicate things with the screws, so I kind of went with this as a compromise, and of course the bottom here with the slides into the screws. So I think that's that. And then the other piece, this is the right side of the card cage, and this I think was pretty final to start with. So looking at this from, this would be the back of the machine. So we've moved this screw hole up a little bit, and I've added the same reinforcements, same nut holes, and my name, all that good stuff. And finally, this isn't the final top, but I've tweaked it a bit. I have the top. It's going to look exactly like this, except the screw holes would be wider without looking like I kind of forced them wider, and that's just so I could kind of test fit this today. And the top is the fastest thing to print. I can print it in about 4 or 5 hours. But before I get into mounting this actually brings up something interesting that comes with the magic and joys of 3D printing. In that, every one of these that I've printed so far, other than my own mistakes, has been fine. But these two I printed at the same time, as you saw. If you saw at the end of the last video, I had this one and this one on the print bed printing. Well, something went a little wrong. I'm guessing the filament bound, because all the way around the side of the part, I don't know if you can see that, there is a bit of an anomalous gap, a line. And that line exists at the same height on both of these. And so here on this guy too, you can probably see it a little bit, right? Yep, right there. And it printed all the way around at the same height. So even if these pieces work, I'm going to have to reprint them. All right, we're all set up here to do a little bit of testing. Before I go to just ramming this into the machine and test fitting, I need to make sure that the fan screws fit into this in the right spot. So when I first added the fan hole here, I had the screw here for this one just a little high, and it conflicted with the PCB guide. And the way that I expect the fan to be installed, if I insert this screw, okay, is that I expect you'll insert the screw end on this end, fan on the outside, nut out here with the washer on it. So I need to make sure that this is going to fit where the PCB guide is, and it looks like it will, but let's push that through. And it does. Perfect. Look at that. That's perfect. Okay. And then we have this guy here. Yeah, and you can hear that layer is not good. It's messing things up. But, okay, so the fan screw holes fit. And, oof. Yeah, that little gap there, I knew something was up because my name didn't print right. But anyway, so that fits, so that at least let us go. And the other thing I noticed with these in terms of print quality is the PCB guides are a little tighter to snap in, but they are getting in there. So that should be okay. So I'm going to put the rest of this together, assemble it, put the screws and nuts in, make sure my nuts fit in my slots, and then I'm going to, we'll mount it to the machine and test the cards out. Alright, before I go to mounting this and getting the fan in, I definitely have to reprint these. Because the holes for these PCB guides are right here in this little anomalous printing mess I have, they were really hard to put in, and I don't know if you can hear this. I'm going to hold this up to the mic, and as I was pressing these in, you could hear a very reassuring sound. Like, this thing is just going to come apart. In fact, when we're done with this, we might just pull it apart. So this must be reprinted, but hopefully it'll at least let us test fit. All right, let's try and test fit this. So I'm in the middle of assembling this. Here, put the pick down. And I don't know if you can see this, but as I've been working on it, like, this is not going to hold up. In fact, I think the only reason this is holding together at all is because of the fan. So I don't know what went wrong printing here, but it went hard wrong. So I'm going to press on and see what it looks like, because as long as I don't put too much stress on it, the inner dimensions I think should still play out. But yeah, joys of 3D printing, folks. Okay, so other than, you know, this mess, which as I've been working with this, if it weren't for the fan, this would have separated already. But whatever, the fan's on. The interior dimensions we're going to test in a bit here look pretty good. I'm only going to put one screw here to kind of hold it in place, and then I'll probably put a couple in, but I don't know if you can tell. I'm popping the light. You can't really, but the screw holes here align nicely with the chassis, so I'm happy with that. Everything else lined up, but it definitely has been a crunchy experience thus far. So I'm just going to attach the top to make it rigid enough to make sure I can do card fit. Probably just do the front 2 screws here, make sure the nuts fit into their respective slots, and then we'll test fit the video card, and then that's how this is going to sit while the replacement cage prints. Okay, let's get the top on. Alright, we're in. Naturally, you can see, because of the weirdness of the print, it's bowing a bit, and of course the card slots are having a hard time staying in their respective slots on this side because of the weird little thing we've got going on in here. It's very crunchy. That really steams my clams. But it should be close enough that when I try and slide the cards in, I just have to take into account that this bow normally wouldn't be here. So if the middle is a little funky, it is what it is. But you can see here my fault line is getting bigger and bigger by the moment. I really think the fan is the only reason this is together. But looked at it from a distance, printing anomalies aside, I think it looks pretty good. Also, I don't know if you can tell, but let's see if we can see it. My nuts fit into my nut slots, so that's always nice. So I got that right, and really I think this is pretty good. Like I said, the screw holes over here line up pretty good. I'm in the light. And the same thing for this side. I only did one because, well, the San Andreas there. But overall, let's see a rough card fit. Again, I'm not going to put too much stock in this given how it is, but it at least let me do a fit test in terms of the cage. All right, very crude test fit time, you know, San Andreas over here, but it should be relatively close, especially the bottom and top slots, since they seem to be most in line with the expected dimensions. Bottom slot, we're just going to give that a slide, and actually it goes in pretty... Oh, just what did I catch? Oh, there's a cable down there. Yeah. Yeah, it's also catching... Oh, that slot's not quite right in there because of the... This PCB guide is pushing out because of the crack here, but okay, it fits right in. It's nice and smooth. It's not too tight. Lines up nicely with the connector here. I'll show you that. Let's try the top. And same kind of deal. Actually, that's better from before, but I don't know, we'll see what happens with the next print, but that's good. And actually, this is how it lines up with the slots. So I'm actually pretty happy with that. Seems to be pretty good. And so not bad, right? Right. So I'm going to get this reprinted so I get a proper print this time. Producing proper prints is principle. And then I have parts on order for the power connector. So we're going to get together. I've got the male and female connectors, and I have a plan, but I'll reveal that when the parts come in. And I also have the parts necessary to run the grounding solution, so I can ground out this terminal and the other one somewhere over there, the video connector, which is on the floor it's down there. So once we get all that together, I think that will round out part 2, and then we'll do a little debrief. Actually, there may only be 2 parts to this. Well, it's another day, and here we are. We've moved out to the bench, as you can see, and that's because I need the room for something else, and so the Model 12 is not actually needed on a desk. It's not like I'm operating the thing. So I decided to bring it out to the bench so I could do 2 things at once, because why the hell not, right? Anyway, I have the most recent version of the cage on here, as you can see, and we have made quite a few adjustments. I've got the top all fastened up. In fact, I have my elongated screw holes there, which apparently the camera does not want to focus on. How about on this side? There we go. And then we have our guides in. I've got my fan hole cut out and all that good stuff. And in fact, I ran off a second spin of this, which is the same card cage here that's over there. And this was actually going to go to somebody, but then I discovered that there are things I need to tweak, and we're going to talk about that. In the meantime, if I have things I need to tweak, why the hell isn't the printer going? Look at this. It's just sitting here minding its own business, twiddling its thumbs like it has nothing better to do. And that is because it broke. It wanted a break. It's been running, to its credit, for about 2 months non-stop, save for a week in there and a few hours here and there. We're awaiting the next project, but for the most part, that thing has been going non-stop. And it finally decided to break. So it needs a couple parts. They're on the way. I don't do universal, generic, blah, blah parts, whether for a printer or a grill or anything else. So I ordered them from Anycubic. And the thing is, it's an entry-level but larger volume printer, and the largest piece of this is 261 meters. Meters. It's 261 millimeters. You know, much smaller. Anyway, it is 261 millimeters wide, and so you need at least a 300 millimeter print bed to be able to cover that. And a lot of the best rated printers don't have that. This one's held up pretty well, but hopefully it holds up again. We'll see. But what's wrong with it now? It looks great. Looks pretty from here. Well, let me set the tripod up and I'll show you a little bit of what is wrong here. Okay, camera locked down. Flip my screen around so I can see what the heck I'm doing. I'm right in the light, so I'm going to apologize for that. Video card. And here's what we're going to do. So I'm going to insert this into each of the slots. And along the bottom, now one of the things you have to keep in mind with this is that you can see here, you may be able to see it's not perfectly straight. If it doesn't come out on camera, the issue with 3D prints with parts like this is they tend to warp while you print them. And so it's definitely a thing. This will depend on material and many other things, but my experience is these are not always consistent. So sometimes I get one that's straighter, sometimes I get one like this that has a little bow. But that has consequences for card fit. You can see here, this one card lines up pretty well with this bottom slot. If you look really closely, and I'll see if I get the camera to zoom in on that, the top part of the card is actually a little higher than on the right side than it is on the left. And that's fairly pronounced, but it actually, I'll move it up a couple of slots and we'll take another look at how it looks a little higher. So if I take this card and I slide it up, I'll just slide it up to here. And now this will give you a much better idea. And I just walked in front of the light, but if I just come up on this and zoom in on there, you'll see that we have a bit of a issue with the bite. It's just a little higher on the right than the left, and it's just enough. I mean, you can see it push the card down as I get into the slot. That's not really acceptable. And you might say to yourself, well, you can get it into the slot, it'll work. It mostly lines up, right? And like, well, yeah, but the problem with that is it doesn't actually. It's going to put stress on the card. It's going to put stress on the slot. So I'm not going for perfection here. There's no perfection in anything I do, folks, but it needs to be better than that. But wait, there's more. The other issue is here, let me move this down a notch. We're just a little to the right. I don't know if you can really see, but the teeth are almost aligned, and the give in the cage allows it to slide in, but it's just a little to the right. And part of it is a result of this bow that's in the side of the cage here that I've mentioned. So what I'm going to have to do here is I need to give you a way to trim that out. And part of that I've tried to do with the holes in the top, the elongated holes. And what I've done is I've taken the concept of these holes and decided to apply them to all of the internal mount screws. So you can see there's a screw here, there's a screw there, there's one down there. All of these screws that are in here that go through the back plane and attach, I'm going to use elongated screws on. In addition, I'm going to take this opportunity to elongate these screws so that it gives you a little bit of wiggle room left to right, in addition to wiggle room on the inside for the backplane mount screws to allow you to slide it back and forth. And this should give you enough flexibility to widen the card slot, move it over in. I have the screw loose so I can adjust it. So that you should be able to match it. So for example, in the problem we're having now where the card is shifted to the right, this should allow you to move the card cage over to the left a little bit, or this side of the card cage over to the left a little bit, and should also afford you the leeway to flex this up or down, left or right. And the thing is, the bottom of the cage comes close enough because it's on the chassis, and so really the chassis kind of forces the issue, that it lines up pretty close. So what we really need is flexibility along the top to be able to just kind of give it a little angular motion and slide this back and forth. And then we need the screw holes to be elongated to provide that latitude. So that is what we're changing in the new version of the design. In addition, the holes on the top of the thing are going to get wider so that we can provide a little more wiggle room with the screws. There's not quite enough leeway there. And that's really where we are with the card cage. Oh, one other thing that's wrong with it, I'll bring the camera over to the other side of the cage so you can see that. Over on the other side of the cage, the fan mounts. So we do have the screws in place for the fan, and they do come through. You can kind of hear them, but that's okay. They, run up against the plastic, but they do come through. If I can get this one in the damn hole. There we go. And for the most part, they fit pretty well. But, I mean, they're a little tight, but they do fit fairly well. So, for example, if I was to go to mount the fan on here, do this. The screw holes can be a little tight. And again, you want to mount the fan so that the airflow is pulling onto the thing when you get to this far. But if I put the screw in, it comes in, and to mount this is a little bit of a pain. Quite frankly, probably shorter versions of these screws that don't go all the way through both holes will be fine. But as you start to get the screws through, there's not quite enough latitude in the screw to make it really easy to get. And that's because the holes are just pretty tight, and they do line up. It's there we go. It's in, but it is a little more of a pain because the screw tolerances are so tight to the major diameter of the screw, the major diameter being the outer diameter of the thread. And I made them fairly tight. And I did the same with the backplane screws. The problem with this is 3D printing has variances. Sometimes the filament doesn't dry as fast. Sometimes it's a different filament from Amazon. Sometimes your printer had a mood. Sometimes Jupiter didn't align with Mars, and the fifth dimension was crying that day. Whatever the cause, this is one of those situations where you really need to be able to have some playroom. So in addition to elongating the screw holes on the inside here for the backplane, I've gone ahead and heightened them just a little bit, and the same thing with these. I've increased their diameter ever so slightly so as to afford a little more flexibility for getting the screws in. Again, this isn't going to be perfect, and I expect this is an advanced user kind of thing. What's the universe for this thing? I don't know. But it can't be much. But you shouldn't have to finagle too much to make this work, too. So that's really it. We just have to get the cards a little more, really get the top with enough flexibility in it so I can align the cards better in the top slots. And then, so that's going to be done by allowing some flexibility in the backplane mounts and in the mounts on the right side of the chassis. And then fixing, affording a little latitude for screw hole mounts for the fans, for variations in the fan, the screws. And then finally, folks, one thing I didn't mention that I did was for these PCB slots, this side you can see the slot holes don't come all the way through, it's solid. And I increased the depth of the holes for the PCB guides on this side. On the right side, they come all the way through, they pop out the back about 1/10 of a millimeter. So what I did was I increased the depth of these holes by about 1/4 of a millimeter, give myself a little extra playroom so that when these snap in, they shouldn't snap in, have any trouble. So where does that leave us out here in front of my bench? Well, where that leaves us is this is going to end part 2. We've gone on, I can't use that comedian's work anymore, so we're just going to say we've gone on long enough. This is doing well, but is in need of some revisions. I'm happy with these parts, but I'm not happy enough. I need to make these a little better. So we're going to end it right here. I'm actually using this opportunity while I'm waiting for parts to test a couple of 3D printing houses, so I can come back to you with the results on that, and they can make it onto the GitHub README. A couple of words of warning. If you're looking at this project on my GitHub now, and you're thinking of printing it, if you have a home printer and you want to print it out, fine, go right ahead. What's it going to cost you in PLA? But I would avoid using the 3D printing houses right now. When I looked on Craft Cloud today, I got a low price of $25, which I probably would avoid. The recommended vendor price was $55 to have this printed. And when I had it looked at with Shapeways, they wanted $300. And if you're going to spend $55 all the way up to $300 printing something that a schmo like me made, at least wait until it's a little better. Don't waste your money, folks, really. Meanwhile, if you have a 3D printer with the volume, or a friend with one that accepts beer, pizza, or anything else in trade, hit them up, have them print it. In the meantime, that's going to do it for us. Next time, we are going to go into getting the hopefully revised cage in. I should have it here next week. And hopefully I'll have the parts for the printer going. We'll get that thing spewing out some things. I might have a little extra bonus to go into it. And we're going to test fit that, and hopefully that'll be the final version. If you want to see the revised version as it stands right at this moment at recording, which is December 6th, 2023, there is a branch out in GitHub, aside from the main branch, that you'll see that has the changes. If you're seeing this after that, ignore that. It's probably into the main branch, and I've fixed it and all that. So anyway, that's going to do it. I'm TJB Chris. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you in part 3 when we touch on grounding, power, and hopefully final installation and testing. Thanks for watching. But wait, there's more. One more thing. Don't go. Those of you who left, sucks to be you guys. Bonus show after hours. Remember this piece that crackled a lot? Sure, we all do. Again, Sally Struthers. Don't know why. Saw those commercials as a kid, stuck in head. Anyway, the fault has gotten rather bad. I'm just going to pull it apart. So let's see what it looks like. And, oh, wow, that just came right apart. And that's what it looks like in there, folks. You can see that stuff did not go well at all. And it just, I don't know why. There's no logical line in here in the design, but it did not adhere. And it didn't even break off right at this overhang. There's actually some material above it. You may not be able to see that. But anyway, I thought you might enjoy watching me break this apart. So now I've done that. That's it. See you next time. Join me for part 3, grounding, electrical, and hopefully testing a finalish version and trying the machine out. I'm TJB Chris. Stay cool.